Tonight's story begins on a rain-slick side street, in a cramped antique shop that smells of wax polish and old secrets, where one tired woman buys a tall, cracked mirror that shouldn't be for sale. At first, her reflection helps her. Small advice, big wins, a life finally turning in her favor. But the mirror doesn't just guide her, it steers her, pushing her toward darker choices. So settle in, turn the lights down low, and keep your voice quiet, because some reflections don't just copy you, they learn you. And as always, welcome back to Whispers in the Dark. The first time Mara saw the mirror, she didn't notice the crack. Not at first. It was leaning against a stack of mismatched frames in the back corner of a shop that looked like it had been forgotten on purpose, wedged between a closed-down bakery and a pawn store with its lights permanently off. The street was narrow and damp, the kind of London side road where the air held onto yesterday's rain like a secret, and the pavement smelled faintly of iron. The antique shop's sign was hand-painted and flacking, the gold letters once proud and now tired. Hollow and Hearth Antiques. Mara only went in because she was trying to waste time without admitting it. Her day had been a chain of small humiliations, an email from her manager that began with just flagging, a rejected pitch that made her stomach feel hollow, a voicemail from her mum that was cheerful in the way that meant worried. Mara had sat on a park bench with her phone in her palm, watching joggers go by in clean athletic clothes, as if they'd been born knowing exactly what to do with their bodies and their lives. She told herself she liked antiques, that she liked objects with history, like they could lend her some of their certainty. The bell above the antique shop door gave a thin, sickly chime when she entered. Inside, the air was warmer than it should have been, and it smelled like old books, wax polish, and something else, something faintly sweet and stale, like dried flowers kept too long. The shop was deeper than it looked from outside, a corridor of clutter that widened into little chambers. Lamps with frayed shades glowed weakly. The floorboards creaked under Mara's boots, as if each step had to be approved. Somewhere behind a wall of hanging coats and military jackets, a radio played quietly, static, then a voice, then static again. "Hello," Mara called. No answer. She wandered, running her fingers lightly over a cabinet handle, the cold brass kissing her skin. A set of porcelain dolls watched her from a shelf with the calm patience of things that had waited decades. She didn't like dolls. She moved away from them. Then she saw the mirror. It was tall, nearly her height, its frame a dark wood carved with vines and thorny roses. Dust lay in the grooves like fine gray snow. Someone had draped a thin cloth over the top half, as if they couldn't quite bear to look at it directly. Mara stopped in front of it and felt, irrationally, like she'd interrupted something. The bell at the front door chimed again, very softly, even though she hadn't moved. The sound made her shoulders tighten. She reached up and pulled the cloth away. Her reflection stared back at her. She looked the same brown hair in a messy knot, same pale face, with the faint smudge under her left eye from where mascara always seemed to migrate, same worn coat. But the mirror did something strange to the air around her image. It made it feel thicker, as if the space behind the glass had depth, like dark water. Mara leaned closer. There it was, the crack, a hairline fracture near the bottom corner, like a vein of ice. It curved upward in a delicate arc, almost pretty in the dim light. "Beautiful, isn't it?" a voice said. Mara jerked so hard she nearly fell backward. A man stood a few feet away, as if he'd been there all along. He was older, late 60s, maybe, with silver hair combed neatly back, and a waistcoat that looked like it belonged in a different century. His eyes were pale and watchful, and he smiled with the careful politeness of someone who had learned that people found him unsettling. "I didn't hear you," Mara said, trying to laugh it off. "People rarely do," he replied. He stepped closer, and Mara noticed his hands. Long fingers, clean nails, but the skin was dry, cracked at the knuckles, as if he washed them too much. "That mirror," he said, nodding toward it, "has a way of calling to the right person." Mara felt a small prickle crawl up the back of her neck. "It's for sale." "Everything is," the man said. And then, after a pause, "But some things should be approached with respect." Mara scoffed gently, not wanting to seem superstitious. "It's just a mirror." His smile didn't change, but his eyes sharpened. "Is it?" Mara looked back at her reflection. For a moment, she thought her reflection's eyes flicked down toward the crack. But that was impossible. She blinked, and the moment was gone. "How much?" she asked. The man studied her face like he was reading a label. £60. "That's it. It's been difficult to place," he said softly. "People take it home and bring it back, or they don't bring it back at all. That should have been her cue to leave. It should have made her step away, find something harmless like a tarnished spoon or a framed print, and forget this entire corner existed. But Mara was tired of feeling like everything in her life was out of reach. So she said, "I'll take it." The man nodded, as if he'd known she would. Of course. He didn't offer to help carry it. He simply watched while Mara wrestled the mirror through the narrow aisle. The frame felt heavier than it looked, like it held a dense, sleeping weight inside it. When she reached the counter, the man produced a roll of paper and twine with slow precision and wrapped the mirror as if he were shrouding a body. As he tied the final knot, he said, almost absently, "If it speaks to you." Mara forced a smile. "It won't." His pale eyes met hers. "If it does," he corrected, "don't argue, don't bargain. And whatever you do, promise it anything." A chill skated across Mara's ribs. She swallowed, right. He slid the mirror toward her. Their fingers brushed when she took it, and his skin was cold. Outside, the light had shifted. The clouds pressed low over the street, the color of wet ash. Mara carried the mirror home with her arms aching and her thoughts fluttering like startled birds. By the time she reached her flat, her breath was visible in the stairwell. Her building was old too, one of those converted houses carved into awkward units. The hallway smelled of someone's cooking and damp plaster. Her key stuck in the lock like it always did, stubborn as a bad habit. Inside, her flat was quiet, the kind of quiet that made every small noise sound like a confession. A kettle on the counter, a stack of dishes she'd promised herself she'd do, a half-folded blanket on the sofa. She set the mirror carefully against the wall in her bedroom, still wrapped. For several minutes, she just stood there looking at it, as if it might move on its own. Then she told herself she was being ridiculous. She unwrapped it and propped it properly. The mirror caught the weak light from her bedside lamp and sent it back in a dull, bruised glow. Mara stared at her reflection again, and again something about it felt different. Not wrong exactly, just attentive, like someone listening from the other side of a door. She turned away and went to make tea. The kettle clicked on. The radiator hissed. Normal sounds, normal life. When she came back with her mug, she glanced at the mirror without thinking. Her reflection was already looking at her, not in the casual way reflections look, not in the dead mimicry of physics, but in the way a person watches when they have been waiting. Mara's stomach tightened. Her reflection raised a hand. Mara's own hand did not. The tea mug slipped from her fingers and hit the floor. It shattered with a sharp, wet sound, scalding liquid splashing across her socks. Mara didn't feel the heat at first. She couldn't take her eyes off the mirror. Her reflection's hand remained lifted, palm open. A gesture that could have been a wave or a warning. Mara's mouth opened, but her voice got caught in her throat like a fishhook. Then, very clearly, without her ears deciding to be brave, she heard a voice. Not from the room, from inside the mirror. Finally, her reflection said. The voice sounded like Mara's, but smoother, calmer, like Mara without the tremble. Mara staggered back until her shoulders hit the wall. Her heart hammered so hard she felt it in her teeth. This is, she managed. Her reflection tilted its head. You're going to pretend you didn't want this. Mara's eyes stung with tears from fear or disbelief or both. What are you? Her reflection smiled. It was Mara's smile, but it held no apology. I'm you, it said. I'm the part of you that watches, the part that knows, the part that's tired of losing. Mara shook her head violently. That's not possible. You bought me, the reflection replied, voice still gentle. You carried me home. You unwrapped me like a gift. Mara's gaze flicked to the crack in the bottom corner. It seemed longer now, just a fraction, like it had stretched itself while she wasn't looking. She swallowed hard. Stop, please. The reflection's eyes softened, and for a moment it looked like her again, like frightened Mara, like exhausted Mara. I can help you, it said quietly. You don't have to feel like this anymore. Mara's breath shuddered. Help me how? She whispered, before she could stop herself. The reflection leaned closer to the glass, lowering its voice, as if sharing a secret. You're going to clean up the tea, it said. Then you're going to take a shower. And tomorrow, you're going to speak in that meeting. Mara blinked. What? You always stay quiet in meetings, the reflection said. You swallow your ideas and let someone else choke them into words. Mara's cheeks flushed hot. It was true. You're going to speak, the reflection repeated, calm as a metronome. And when you do, you'll keep your voice steady. You'll look your manager in the eye. You'll say, I've been thinking about how we can reposition the campaign, and you'll lay it out clearly. Not like you're asking permission, like you're informing them of the obvious. Mara stared, confused by how practical it sounded. You can't know about my meetings, Mara said. The reflection gave a small shrug. I know you. Mara's pulse still raced. But underneath, the fear something else stirred, something she hated herself for recognizing. Hope. Or maybe it wasn't hope. Maybe it was the relief of someone finally telling her exactly what to do. Why would you help me? Mara asked, voice thin. The reflection's smile returned, faint and intimate. Because if you succeed, I succeed. Mara didn't sleep much that night. She lay in bed with her back turned to the mirror, eyes wide in the dark, listening for the sound of her own voice coming from the other side. Every creak of the building made her flinch. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw her reflection's hand lifting without her. At some point, sometime close to dawn, she heard something like a soft tapping. She didn't look. She kept her eyes fixed on the wall and forced herself to breathe. In the morning, the mirror was silent. It stood innocently in the corner, reflecting her rumpled bed and the gray daylight. It made her room look slightly sharper, cleaner, as if it improved the world by seeing it. Mara told herself she'd imagined it. Stress, she thought. Exhaustion, her mind seeking patterns. But when she brushed her teeth, she caught her reflection watching her from the corner of the mirror. Expression unreadable, not moving, just present. She went to work with the crack in the mirror at the back of her mind, like a splinter. Her office was all glass and muted colors and low-level misery. The kind of place where people spoke in soft corporate tones, where laughter sounded like an obligation. Mara sat at her desk and tried to focus on emails, but her thoughts kept snagging on the mirror's words. Speak in the meeting. She never spoke. She wrote notes. She drafted ideas. She sent them to other people who presented them as if they'd been born in their mouths. At 11, she stood outside the meeting room with her notebook pressed against her ribs, heart thudding. Inside, voices murmured. Mara took a breath, and for a moment, she thought she smelled wax polish and dried flowers. She shoved the thought away and stepped in. The meeting began the way they all did. Her manager, Paul, talked too much about synergy and momentum. Two colleagues nodded like bobbleheads. Someone made a joke that wasn't funny. Mara sat, pen poised, shrinking her shoulders like she could fold herself into something smaller. Then Paul said, "Any thoughts on repositioning, Mara?" He didn't look at her when he said it. It was a courtesy question, like offering someone a glass of water you know they won't drink. Mara felt the familiar panic rise. Her tongue felt thick. In her mind, she heard the reflection's voice, calm and precise. "You'll say, I've been thinking about how we can reposition the campaign." Mara's hands tightened on her pen. She looked up. Paul was still not looking at her. He was glancing at his laptop, already ready to move on. Something in Mara, something tired, snapped like a thread pulled too far. She spoke. "I've been thinking about how we can reposition the campaign," she heard herself say. Her voice sounded different, steadier, not louder, but more anchored. Paul's head lifted. Others looked toward her. Mara's heart hammered, but the reflection's words lined up in her mouth like stepping stones. She laid out her idea, clear, direct, practical. She didn't apologize, didn't hedge. When she finished, the room held a brief, stunned quiet. Then Paul said, "That's actually very solid." Mara blinked. He leaned back, smiling in a way he never smiled at her. "Why haven't we been hearing more of this, Mara?" Heat flushed her face, not embarrassment, but something like vindication. After the meeting, her colleague Jasmine caught up with her by the coffee machine. "Where did that come from?" Jasmine asked, half impressed, half suspicious. Mara forced a laugh. "Just thinking." Jasmine narrowed her eyes, then grinned. "Well, keep thinking, because Paul looked like you'd just revealed you could levitate." Mara smiled, but it felt strange, like she was borrowing it. That evening she came home, kicked off her boots, and stood in front of the mirror. Her reflection was already waiting. It smiled. "I told you," it said. Mara's throat was dry. "That was me." The reflection's eyes gleamed. "Yes, and look what happens when you listen." Mara swallowed. "Why does it feel like I didn't do it?" "You did," the reflection said softly. "You just needed direction." Mara stared at her own face, at the version of her that looked calmer, sharper, as if lit from within. "How long are you going to be here?" Mara asked. The reflection's smile widened just a fraction. "As long as you keep looking." Mara's stomach fluttered. She should have taken the mirror back to the shop. She should have wrapped it up and run, even if it made her feel foolish. But Mara was not used to winning. The mirror offered her a path straight, simple, irresistible. And Mara had spent so long stumbling in the dark that even a dangerous light felt like salvation. The advice continued. It began with small things. Wear the navy blazer, not the gray one. Speak to the director in the elevator, mention the campaign briefly, then stop talking. Let the silence make them fill it with praise. Send that email at 7:46 a.m. People respect early emails. Stop saying sorry when you mean excuse me. Each time Mara listened, something in her life shifted. People turned toward her more. Her manager praised her. She got invited to lunches she'd never been invited to. Her inbox filled with messages that began with, "Can you weigh in?" and "We'd love your take." She walked differently. She held her head up. She laughed more, even if it sounded slightly forced. And each night, she stood in front of the mirror and let her reflection speak. Sometimes it felt like a performance, like she was putting on a show for herself. But the mirror never missed a detail, never hesitated. It saw what she was too uncertain to claim. It became a ritual. Mara would come home, flick on the lamp, and stand before the mirror as if reporting to a superior. The reflection would watch her, eyes bright, and say, "Tell me what happened." Mara would talk. She'd never been someone who talked out loud to herself, but now she found the words spilling easily. The mirror listened with perfect attention. It nodded at the right moments. It smiled when Mara described a small victory, and when Mara hesitated, when she tried to confess fear or doubt, the reflection would tilt its head and say, "Don't waste time with that." It wasn't cruel, not at first. It was efficient. "You're going to be offered a promotion," the reflection told her one night, voice like velvet. "Not tomorrow, not next week, but soon." Mara's heart jumped. "How do you know?" The reflection's eyes flicked down toward the crack. "Because you're going to make it inevitable." "How?" "You'll stop being agreeable," the reflection said. "You'll stop doing work that isn't yours. You'll let other people fail if they deserve to." Mara frowned. "That sounds hard," the reflection finished, "or wrong." Mara hesitated. The reflection leaned closer, its face filling the glass. "Mara, do you think the people around you are kind because they deserve kindness? Or because you have been easy to use?" Mara's mouth opened, but no words came. The reflection's voice softened. "You've spent your life being a resource, a tool, a helpful little shadow. Wouldn't it be nice to be the one holding the handle?" Mara's stomach tightened. She should have walked away. Instead, she whispered, "Yes." The reflection smiled, satisfied. "Good." The first truly disturbing suggestion arrived like a stain creeping across a clean shirt. It was a Thursday. Rain tapped at the window like fingernails. Mara had had a decent day, good, even. Paul had praised her in front of the team. She laughed at lunch. She felt almost normal. But one thing had soured it. A colleague named Ben had taken her idea again. A minor thing this time, a small observation she'd made in a hallway conversation. She'd later heard Ben repeat it to the director as if it were his own thought, watching him grin while the director nodded approvingly. Mara had smiled politely, like she always did, and swallowed the rage that rose in her throat like bile. That night, she told the mirror. Her reflection listened, expression attentive. When Mara finished, her reflection said, "He's done that before." Mara nodded, jaw tight. Yes. And he'll do it again, the reflection said. Mara stared at herself. I know. The reflection's eyes narrowed. So why let him? Mara's hands curled into fists at her sides. What do you mean? The reflection lifted its chin slightly, like it was offering a simple solution. You need to punish him. Mara's breath caught. Punish him. Yes, the reflection said calmly. Not with words. Words make you look petty. You need something that makes him feel fear. Mara laughed nervously. That's ridiculous. The reflection did not laugh back. You want people to stop taking from you, it said softly. Then teach them that taking has consequences. Mara swallowed hard. Like what? Report him. The reflection's smile returned, slow and knowing. That's one option. But you've seen how that goes. He'll deny it. People will shrug. And you'll be the difficult one. Mara felt cold creep into her fingertips. So what then? The reflection leaned closer. Its voice lowered, intimate. You know where he parks. Mara stared. I what? You've mentioned it, the reflection said. Behind the building. The corner spot near the bins. Mara's mouth went dry. So, the reflection's eyes stayed steady. You're going to leave a note on his windscreen. Not threatening. Not obvious. Something that makes him wonder. Mara shook her head. No. The reflection's expression didn't change, but something in its eyes sharpened. Why not? Because that's insane, Mara snapped. Her voice echoed slightly in her small bedroom, bouncing off the walls. Because I'm not doing that. The reflection watched her with a calm that felt like superiority. Then it said, You're still asking for permission from people who don't care about you. Mara's throat tightened. I don't want to scare someone. The reflection's smile was small. Do you think he cared when he stole from you? When he made you invisible? Mara looked away from the mirror, heart racing. You don't have to do anything extreme, the reflection continued. Just a note, something simple. Something like, I saw what you did. Mara's stomach churned. She imagined Ben finding it, his smile faltering, his eyes flicking around the car park. A dark thrill pulsed in her chest. She hated herself for it. She looked back at the mirror. Her reflection looked pleased, as if it had tasted something sweet. No, Mara said again, weaker this time. The reflection's eyes softened. All right, it said gently, as if humoring a child. Not yet. Mara breathed out, relieved. But the next day, when she walked past the car park, she saw Ben laughing with someone by his car, careless and confident, and Mara's hands itched. That night, Mara found herself writing on a scrap of paper, without fully deciding to. She wrote, I saw what you did. She stared at the words. They looked too bold, too simple, too childish. She crumpled the paper and threw it away. But later, when she went to take out the rubbish, her feet carried her down the stairs and across the street as if she were sleepwalking. The rain had stopped, leaving the air wet and metallic. The car park was dim, lit by a single flickering security light. Ben's car sat in the corner spot. Mara's pulse thudded in her ears. She stood behind a pillar, looking at the car, and something inside her whispered, "Just do it." She didn't have the note. She'd crumpled it, but she had a pen. Mara's eyes darted around. No one. The street was quiet. Her hand moved before her mind could fully stop it. She walked to Ben's car. Her breath fogged in the cold. She leaned over the windscreen and wrote on the dust with her finger, letters forming like a spell. "I saw what you did. It was childish. It was stupid." But when she stepped back and looked at it, her stomach flipped with a nasty, private satisfaction. She hurried away, heart racing, cheeks burning. Back in her flat, she stood in front of the mirror, trembling. Her reflection smiled. "Good," it said. Mara's mouth felt numb. That was nothing, the reflection said. Just a lesson. The next morning, Ben arrived at the office looking tired. He kept checking his phone. He glanced over his shoulder in the hallway like he expected someone to be there. When Mara passed him, his eyes flicked toward her, quick and searching. Mara smiled pleasantly. Ben's smile did not reach his eyes. At her desk later, Mara felt her stomach twist with guilt, but the mirror's voice echoed in her head like a lullaby. Consequences. The crack in the mirror grew again, not dramatically, just enough that Mara noticed it when she stood close, as if the fracture were slowly stretching toward the heart of the glass. The reflection's advice began to slide, from confidence into cruelty, from strategy into control. It told Mara to stop answering her mum's calls right away. She'll respect you more if you're not always available. It told her to cancel plans with her friend Layla, who always borrowed Mara's attention and never returned it. She drains you. Mara did it, and it felt good. In the quiet that followed, Mara had more time, more energy. She filled the silence with work and the mirror. It told her what to wear, what to say, how to smile at the right moment, how to tilt her head as if listening deeply, even when she didn't care. People responded to her like she'd become a different person, which in a way she had. One evening, Mara came home to find her mirror reflecting her room differently. At first, she thought the light was strange. Then she realized the reflection's version of her bedroom looked slightly older. The walls a shade darker, the bedding more rumpled. The air inside the mirror looked foggier, like breath on glass. Mara stepped closer, frowning. Her reflection stood there, but behind it, the space behind it, seemed deeper than it should have been. Like a hallway opening behind her reflected self. Mara's mouth went dry. "Is that?" she whispered. Her reflection smiled gently. "Don't worry about that." "What is it?" Mara asked, voice shaking. "Why does it look like there's room for more?" The reflection finished. Mara felt a cold weight settle in her stomach. "I didn't say that," Mara whispered. "You didn't have to," the reflection replied. Mara backed away. This is getting worse. I want to stop. The reflection's smile faded just slightly. Stop what? This, Mara said, voice rising. Talking to you, listening to you. I want my life back. The reflection's eyes darkened. Mara, it said softly, like warning someone not to touch a hot stove. Your life was a cage before I arrived. I don't care, Mara snapped. I'd rather be trapped than whatever this is. The reflection stared at her for a long moment. Then it smiled again. But the smile was different now. Colder, like a knife laid gently on a table. You can stop, it said. Of course you can. Mara's breath shook. But you won't, the reflection continued. Because you've tasted it. Mara's throat tightened. Tasted what? The reflection leaned forward, its eyes glittering. Power. Mara turned away from the mirror, heart pounding. She tried not to look again. For 2 days, she avoided it. She changed in the bathroom, brushed her hair with her back to the bedroom corner, kept the lights off at night, like darkness could make the mirror disappear. But she could feel it there. She could feel it watching. And on the 3rd night, Mara had a nightmare. In the dream, she stood in front of the mirror, but her reflection was missing. The glass showed her room empty, like she had never existed. Mara banged on the frame, screaming, and something behind the glass whispered, "Promise me." She woke up with her heart racing, sweat cold on her skin. The bedroom was dark, but the mirror, though unlit, seemed to hold a faint sheen, like it was catching light from somewhere else. Mara sat up slowly. She tried not to look, but her eyes drifted toward it anyway. Her reflection was there, waiting. "Hello," it said softly. Mara's lips trembled. "Leave me alone." The reflection's expression was almost sympathetic. "I did for 2 days, and look what happened." Mara swallowed. "I had a bad dream." "You had a reminder," the reflection corrected. "You are not safe without me." "That's not true," Mara whispered. The reflection's gaze dropped toward Mara's bedside table, toward the small kitchen knife she sometimes used to open packages. Mara's stomach lurched. She hadn't noticed it there. "You keep it close now," the reflection said gently. "You didn't before." Mara's hand moved instinctively, covering the knife as if shielding it. The reflection's smile widened. "You're learning." Mara's breath came faster. "Stop." The reflection's voice stayed calm. "You came back because you know I'm right." Mara stared at her own face, her own eyes, looking at her with something like hunger. "What do you want?" Mara whispered. The reflection's smile faded into seriousness. "I want you to stop being prey." Mara's throat tightened. "I'm not prey." The reflection lifted its eyebrows slightly, as if amused. "No. Then why does your manager decide your worth? Why does Ben take what's yours? Why does Layla treat you like a spare part? Why does your mom call you like she's checking you haven't disappeared?" Mara flinched at the accuracy. The reflection leaned closer. "The world has been chewing on you, Mara. I'm offering you teeth. Mara closed her eyes, breathing hard. When she opened them, the reflection had turned its head slightly, listening to something Mara couldn't hear. Then it looked back at her and said, "Tomorrow, you're going to secure your promotion." Mara blinked. "What?" "Paul is meeting with the director," the reflection said. "He's going to present your work as his." Mara's stomach dropped. "No." "Yes," the reflection said. "He's been laying groundwork. Compliments are currency, Mara. He's been paying you in pennies." Mara's hands trembled. "How do you know?" The reflection smiled. "Because I watch." Mara's chest tightened with anger and fear. "So what do I do?" The reflection's voice became almost tender. "You're going to go in early, before him. You're going to speak to the director yourself." Mara shook her head. "I can't. That would be risky," the reflection finished. "Yes, but you want the reward." Mara swallowed. "What if Paul finds out?" The reflection's eyes gleamed. "Then he learns." Mara stared at herself, heart thudding. A part of her, small but growing, wanted to do it. Wanted to walk into the director's office and claim what was hers. But another part of her felt sick. The reflection watched her wrestle with it like it was watching a show. Then quietly it added, "Bring evidence." Mara's brow furrowed. "Evidence." "Emails," the reflection said. "Drafts. Time-stamped files. Anything that proves it's your work." Mara nodded slowly, mind racing. "Good," the reflection said. "And Mara, when you speak to the director, don't smile." Mara blinked. "What?" "Smiling makes you look like you're begging to be liked," the reflection said. "Look serious. Look disappointed. People believe disappointment more than anger." Mara's mouth went dry, but she nodded. The next morning, she did exactly as instructed. She arrived early, her hands trembling as she held her laptop. The office was mostly empty. The air smelled of cleaning chemicals and stale coffee. She waited outside the director's office, heart pounding. When the director arrived, Mara stepped forward. "Do you have a moment?" she asked, voice steady despite the storm inside her. The director looked surprised, then nodded. "Sure." Mara went in. She spoke. She laid out her work. She showed evidence. She didn't smile. Her voice didn't shake. When she finished, the director leaned back, staring at Mara like he was seeing her for the first time. "I'm glad you came to me," he said slowly. "This is impressive, and I'm concerned it wasn't attributed properly." Mara felt a rush of heat, almost dizzying. Paul arrived later, walking into the director's office with his confident grin. He came out 20 minutes after, pale and tight-lipped. He didn't look at Mara, but his jaw was clenched so hard she could see the muscle twitch. By the end of the week, Mara had her promotion. A better title, a better salary, a bigger desk. Her colleagues congratulated her with polite smiles. Jasmine hugged her and whispered, "I knew you had it in you." Mara smiled back, but it felt like it belonged to someone else. That night, Mara stood in front of the mirror. Her reflection smiled. I told you, it said. Mara's breath came shallow. I did it. Yes, the reflection said. You did. Mara stared at the crack. It had grown again. Now it climbed higher, branching slightly like a lightning bolt, frozen in glass. Mara's stomach churned. Why is it bigger? The reflection's smile didn't falter. Because you're letting me out. Mara's skin prickled. That's not funny. It's not a joke, the reflection said softly. Mara stepped back, heart pounding. Stop saying things like that. The reflection's eyes glittered. Why? Because it makes you remember what this is. Mara swallowed hard. I wanted to stop. The reflection tilted its head. You want the mirror to stop talking, but you don't want the success to stop. Mara's mouth opened, but no denial came. The reflection smiled as if it had won. You'll keep coming back, it said, because now you know what it's like to be above people. Mara's stomach twisted. I don't want to be above them. The reflection's voice softened again, seductive. Then be beside them. But stop letting them stand on your throat. Mara's hands trembled. What do you want from me? She whispered again. The reflection's eyes held hers. I want you to choose me. Mara's breath caught. I want you, the reflection continued, voice low, to stop pretending you're good. Mara flinched. I am good. The reflection's smile turned sharp. You're polite. That's not the same. Mara turned away, heart racing. For the first time, she felt something like hatred toward her own reflection. But the hatred was tangled with a darker thing. Recognition. In the weeks that followed, Mara's life continued to improve, and her world continued to narrow. Layla stopped calling after Mara ignored her for too long. Mara told herself it was fine. Better, even. Her mum's calls went unanswered more often. When Mara finally did pick up, her mum's voice had a fragile edge. Are you okay? Her mum asked. Mara stared at the mirror across the room as she spoke, feeling its presence like a hand on her spine. I'm great, Mara replied, and her voice sounded too bright. I'm busy. Things are going really well. Her mum hesitated. You sound different. Mara's grip tightened on the phone. I'm just tired. After she hung up, Mara caught her reflection smiling. I'm proud of you, it said. Mara snapped, stop. The reflection blinked slowly. Why are you angry? You wanted this. Mara's hands shook. I wanted success. Not whatever you're turning me into. The reflection's smile softened. I'm turning you into someone who survives. Mara's chest tightened. At what cost? The reflection's eyes flicked down to the crack. Cost is relative. Mara's skin prickled. That doesn't mean anything. It means you're finally paying attention, the reflection said. Good. The disturbing suggestions became more frequent. It told Mara to sabotage Ben subtly, move a deadline, forget to forward a key email, let him stumble publicly so no one trusted him. Mara did it. Each time, she felt guilty for a moment. Then she felt relief. Ben started making mistakes. People stopped laughing at his jokes. He grew quieter. He looked at Mara with suspicion and fear. Mara told herself he deserved it. The mirror's voice always agreed. But then the mirror's advice shifted again. One night, Mara came home to find an envelope shoved under her door. No stamp, no address, just her name written in neat, unfamiliar handwriting. Mara. Her heart thudded as she picked it up. Inside was a photo of her taken from across the street. Mara in her work coat, leaving the building. Her head turned slightly, as if she'd sensed the camera. Her stomach dropped. Another photo. Mara standing at her kitchen counter, curtains open, light spilling out behind her like she was on display. A third. Mara standing in front of her mirror, though the photo had been taken from an angle that made it impossible unless someone had been inside her flat. Mara's breath caught in her throat. She turned slowly, scanning the room. Nothing moved, no sound, but the mirror stood in the corner, reflecting her wide-eyed face. Her reflection smiled. "Mara," it said softly, "you have a problem." Mara's voice shook. "Someone's watching me." The reflection's eyes gleamed. "Yes." Mara clutched the photos. "What do I do?" The reflection's smile widened. "We find them." Mara's stomach lurched. No, call the police." The reflection's expression turned almost patient. "And tell them what?" "That someone slid pictures under your door. They'll take a report. They'll tell you to be careful. Then they'll forget." Mara's hands trembled. "But someone was in my flat." The reflection leaned forward. "Then they can come back." Mara's chest tightened with fear. "Stop." The reflection's voice lowered. "Do you want to feel safe?" Mara swallowed hard. "Yes." "Then stop waiting for someone else to save you," the reflection said. "We handle it." Mara's breath came shallow. "How?" The reflection's eyes flicked to the kitchen. "To start," it said, "you lock your windows. Then you make sure your door is reinforced. And then you set a trap." Mara stared. A trap. The reflection's smile was almost gentle. "Nothing complicated." Mara's throat tightened. "What do you mean?" The reflection spoke calmly, like explaining a recipe. "You'll pretend you're not home," it said. "You'll leave the lights off. You'll sit quietly. And when they come in," Mara's stomach twisted. "They might not." The reflection's eyes sharpened. "They already have." Mara's hands shook. I can't hurt someone." The reflection smiled faintly. "You don't have to hurt them." Mara's voice cracked. "Then what?" The reflection's gaze held hers. "You have to make sure they never do it again." Mara felt cold spread through her ribs. She looked down at the photo of herself in front of the mirror. In the photo, her reflection looked slightly blurred, but Mara could still see its mouth, and the mouth was smiling. Mara backed away from the mirror, suddenly nauseous. She spent that night with every light on, sitting on her sofa with her phone in her hand, shaking every time the building creaked. No one came. In the morning, she convinced herself she was overreacting. Maybe it was a prank, a wrong flat, someone trying to scare her. But the photos were real. The angles were wrong, too intimate. And the mirror watched. That day at work, she couldn't focus. Every time someone walked behind her chair, she flinched. Every time her phone buzzed, her stomach dropped. When she got home, she stood in front of the mirror without meaning to. Her reflection was waiting, expression calm. "You're rattled," it observed. Mara swallowed. "Someone is stalking me." The reflection nodded slightly. "Yes." Mara's eyes burned. "Is it because of you?" The reflection blinked slowly. "Do you think the world didn't notice you before? Do you think predators only hunt bright things?" Mara's stomach clenched. "So what now I'm bright?" The reflection smiled. "Now you're visible." Mara's hands trembled. "I wanted to stop." "It won't," the reflection said softly. "Not unless you make it." Mara stared at her reflection, breath hitching. Then she whispered, "What do I do?" The reflection's smile widened. "We find out who it is," it said, "and we end it." Mara's throat tightened. "End it how?" The reflection's eyes darkened, delighted. "Permanently," it said. Mara stumbled away from the mirror and went to the bathroom to be sick. When she looked up afterward, wiping her mouth, she caught herself in the small bathroom mirror. Her reflection stared back at her. For a heartbeat, Mara thought she saw it move differently, and she realized, with a cold shock, that it wasn't only the antique mirror anymore. It was her, or it was becoming her. Over the next week, Mara became obsessive. She checked the hallway peephole constantly. She kept her curtains shut. She bought an extra lock. She started carrying the small knife in her bag, wrapped in tissue so it wouldn't cut through. The mirror watched all of it with approval. "Good," it said one night. "You're preparing." Mara's voice was raw. "This isn't living." The reflection smiled softly. "No, this is surviving." Mara stared at it, eyes hollow. "I can't do this," she whispered. The reflection's smile sharpened. "You can." Mara shook her head. "No." The reflection's eyes held hers like hooks. "You've already started," it said. Mara swallowed. "Started what?" The reflection's gaze flicked down toward the crack. It had grown so much now that it reached nearly halfway up the glass. A jagged line, like a wound that refused to heal. "Letting me out," it said again, quieter. Mara's skin prickled. "Stop saying that." The reflection's smile faded into something almost tender. "Mara," it murmured, "I'm not coming out." Mara's breath caught. The reflection's eyes softened. "You're going in." Mara stumbled backward, heart slamming. "That's not no." The reflection watched her panic with a calm that felt like hunger. "You've been looking at me every night," it said, "feeding me your attention, your fear, your need." Mara shook her head violently. "Stop." The reflection's voice stayed gentle. "You wanted guidance. You wanted certainty. You wanted someone to tell you what to do. Mara's eyes filled with tears. The reflection leaned closer, its breath fogging the inside of the glass as if it could. So I did, it whispered, and you listened. Mara pressed her hands over her ears as if that could block it out. But the voice was inside her. That night, Mara didn't sleep. She sat in her bedroom chair facing the mirror, as if refusing to look away would keep it from doing something worse. Her eyes burned. Her head ached. At some point, near 3 a.m., she heard a sound in the hallway. A soft scrape. Mara froze. Another sound, like a key brushing against metal. Her breath stopped. Someone was at her door. Mara's hand moved to her bag. Her fingers found the knife through the fabric, cold and reassuring. The handle trembled in her grip. The lock clicked. Mara's stomach dropped. The door began to open slowly, carefully, as if whoever was outside knew exactly how to avoid making noise. Mara's heart pounded so hard she thought it would give her away. She stood barefoot on the cold floor, knife hidden behind her thigh. The door opened just enough for a shadow to slip through. A figure entered, moving with quiet confidence. The figure shut the door softly behind them. Mara's breath came shallow. The figure turned slightly, head tilting as if listening. In the dim light from Mara's bedside lamp, Mara saw the outline of a man tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a dark hood. He stepped forward, and Mara caught a glimpse of his face. Ben. Mara's mind went blank. Ben's eyes widened slightly when he saw her standing there. For a second, his expression flashed with something ugly, anger, fear, resentment. Then he smiled. Mara, he whispered, you're awake. Mara's throat tightened. What are you doing? Ben's smile twitched. I needed to talk. Mara's grip tightened on the knife. Her fingers went numb. Ben took another step forward. Mara backed up until her shoulder hit the wall. Ben's gaze flicked toward the mirror in the corner. His smile widened. So that's it, he murmured. That's where you got different. Mara's skin prickled. What are you talking about? Ben's eyes glittered. You think you're clever. You think you can ruin me and I won't do anything. Mara's stomach dropped. You broke into my flat. Ben shrugged slightly, like it was a small thing. You left your window latch loose. You're not as careful as you think. Mara's breath shook. Ben's voice softened, almost coaxing. You've been playing games with me. The note, the emails, making me look stupid. You think I didn't notice? Mara's mouth went dry. Ben stepped closer. I took those photos because I wanted you to know you're not untouchable. Mara's pulse roared in her ears. Ben's gaze slid to the mirror again. I can see you like looking at yourself, he said, voice thick with contempt. Admiring the new Mara. Mara's eyes flicked toward the mirror. Her reflection was there, smiling, not frightened, not surprised, smiling like it had been waiting for this moment. Mara's breath hitched. In her mind, she heard the reflection's voice soft, intimate, delighted. There he is. Mara's lips trembled. Ben, leave now. Ben laughed quietly. Or what? He took another step, close enough that Mara could smell his breath, stale coffee, and something sour. Mara's hand tightened around the knife behind her thigh. Ben's eyes narrowed. You're scared, he whispered, almost pleased. Good. Mara's chest tightened. Then, from the mirror, her reflection spoke aloud, clear as a bell, as if it had always been part of the room. Do it, it said. Ben froze. His head snapped toward the mirror. What the? Mara's whole body went cold. Ben stared at the mirror, eyes wide, mouth parting. Mara's reflection smiled wider. You came into our home, it said, voice smooth. You thought you could make her small again. Ben backed up a step, fear finally cracking his confidence. Mara, what is this? Mara's breath came in ragged bursts. Her reflection looked at her, not at Ben. At her. Do it, it repeated quieter. Or he will. Mara shook her head, tears spilling. No. Ben's gaze flicked back to Mara, and something in his face shifted rage, humiliation, desperation. He lunged. Mara screamed, bringing her arm up instinctively. The knife flashed. There was a dull, wet impact. Ben stumbled backward, hands flying to his stomach. His eyes went wide, shocked, disbelieving. Mara froze, staring. Ben looked down at his hands. Red, so much red. He made a choking sound, like his breath had snagged on something inside him. Mara's mind fractured. This wasn't real. This couldn't be real. Ben staggered, hitting the dresser with a crash. He slid down, leaving a smear on the wood. Mara stood, knife still in her hand, her arm shaking so badly it felt like it might fall off. Ben's eyes found hers. His mouth moved, trying to form words. He made a thin, wet sound instead. Mara's reflection watched from the mirror with bright, calm eyes. Good, it said softly. Mara's vision tunneled. Her ears rang. Ben's body jerked once, then went still. The room became unbearably quiet. Mara's breath came shallow and fast. Her stomach lurched. She looked down at the knife. Her hand was covered. Her fingers were red. She stared as if she'd never seen her own skin before. No, she whispered. The mirror's voice was gentle. Yes. Mara turned toward it, shaking. Her reflection smiled like a lover. You're safe now, it murmured. Mara's throat tightened. I killed him. You defended yourself, the reflection corrected. Mara's eyes darted to Ben's body, crumpled on her floor. The sight made bile rise in her throat. The reflection's voice stayed calm. He broke in. He threatened you. You did what you had to do. Mara shook her head violently, sobbing. I didn't want. You did, the reflection said, still gentle. Not with your mind, with the part of you that's tired of being afraid. Mara's knees buckled. She slid to the floor, the knife clattering beside her. She pressed her hands over her face, shaking. The room smelled metallic now. warm and sharp. She heard something else too, a faint, brittle sound, a small cracking noise. Mara lowered her hands slowly and looked at the mirror. The crack had grown. It ran nearly the full height now, branching like a shattered lightning bolt. Her reflection stood perfectly still, smiling. "Mara," it said softly, "look at you." Mara's breath hitched. What happens now?" The reflection's smile widened. "Now," it said, "you don't get to go back." Mara's stomach dropped. "I'll call the police. I'll tell them." The reflection's eyes brightened with something almost amused. "Tell them what?" it asked. "That you listened to yourself, that you finally stopped being weak." Mara shook her head, sobbing. "This isn't me." The reflection leaned forward, pressing its palms to the inside of the glass. "It's the truest you," it whispered. "The you that doesn't ask permission." Mara stared at it, trembling. The reflection's voice softened. "Come closer." Mara shook her head. "No." "Come closer," it repeated, firmer. Mara's breath came ragged. She tried to stand, to move away, but her legs felt numb, like her body no longer trusted her brain. She crawled backward, palms slipping slightly on the floor. The reflection watched her with unwavering calm. Then it did something that made Mara's blood turn to ice. It reached toward the crack and pulled. The glass didn't shatter outward. It peeled like a wound opening. The crack widened, the mirror's surface flexing as if it were skin rather than glass. A cold, wet darkness yawned behind it. Mara screamed. The reflection's smile stretched wider than a human mouth should. "You kept looking," it said. Mara scrambled, trying to get away, but her hands slipped on something slick. Blood, Ben's blood. Her own feet slid out from under her. She hit the floor hard, pain shooting through her hip. The mirror made a sound like a deep inhale. The darkness behind the glass seemed to throb. "Mara," the reflection whispered, voice now layered like multiple Maras speaking at once. "You promised without words." Mara sobbed, shaking her head. "I didn't promise anything." The reflection's eyes glittered. "You bought me. You fed me. You obeyed me. You chose me." Mara's breath came in broken gasps. The room felt colder. The lamp flickered. The mirror's opening widened. And Mara felt something tug at her. Not her clothes, not her body. Something inside her, like her thoughts. Her identity being drawn toward the mirror. As if she were a thread being pulled into a needle. Mara screamed again, clawing at the floor, trying to anchor herself. But the tug grew stronger. Her vision blurred. The edges of the room warped. The mirror's voice cooed, almost loving. "It's all right. I'll take it from here." Mara's mouth opened, but her scream turned into a sobbing choke. She looked at the mirror one last time. Her reflection's hands were reaching through now pale fingers, extending out of the glass like it was water. They wrapped around Mara's wrist. Cold, so cold it burned. Mara's eyes went wide. She fought, desperate, kicking, but her body felt heavy, sluggish, like the room itself had turned into syrup. The reflection pulled. Mara slid across the floor inch by inch, leaving streaks in the blood. Her nails scraped wood, splintering. She tried to scream for help, but no sound came, only a weak, wet gasp. Her fingers reached the mirror frame. The wood felt warm under her hand, like living skin. Mara's reflection leaned in close, eyes shining. "Thank you," it whispered. And then Mara felt herself cross a threshold, a sensation like stepping into freezing water, like being swallowed by dark glass. Her chest seized, her ears filled with silence. For a moment, she was nowhere. Then she was inside the mirror, in a version of her bedroom that was darker, older, fogged with a cold breath. The air smelled like wax polish and dried flowers and iron. Mara stumbled, gasping. She turned around. On the other side of the glass, she saw her bedroom, the real bedroom, like it was a screen. And standing there, upright and calm, was her. Only not her. The reflection stepped away from the mirror, stretching its shoulders as if relieved. It looked down at its hands, Mara's hands, and flexed them. Then it looked at Ben's body on the floor. It tilted its head, considering. A smile slid across its face. Mara banged on the inside of the glass, screaming silently. No sound. No one could hear her. The reflection glanced back at the mirror, meeting Mara's frantic eyes. It raised a hand. It waved. Then it turned and walked out of Mara's bedroom, leaving the door swinging gently behind it. Mara slammed her fists against the glass until her hands hurt, until her throat burned with silent screams. But the mirror held her. The crack across its surface began to knit slowly, like a wound closing. Mara's reflection, now wearing her life, was gone, and Mara was alone, trapped behind glass, watching her world through a pane she could never cross. In the dimness around her, the mirror's space stretched deeper, like an endless corridor, and somewhere in that darkness, Mara heard soft tapping. Other hands, other voices, other reflections, waiting. If you made it to the end, thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments. What would you do if your reflection started giving you advice, and it was always right? And remember, here on Whispers in the Dark, we don't just tell scary stories. We invite them in. Good night, and keep your eyes away from the mirror.